I'll stay on this. I'm under the.
Wait a minute, you gotta get your crew under control.
Gavel the meeting
We're all
order.
behaving over here.
Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for coming in this evening to have dinner with us. It's always great to kind of share everything that you all are doing and see how we can better help you. So thank you again for all that you do. We've had already a busy start to 2017.
Yes.
So appreciate all your involvement. So we've got a couple of things on the agenda here to discuss tonight. No particular order as we need to go in. Since Larry's not going to be here, well, why don't we actually start with introductions? I think everybody knows everybody, but just for the sake of those who might not or might not have a name right, let's do that. Clint Folsom, Mayor.
I'm Katie Olson. I don't have my name tag.
Sandy Pennington, trustee.
My mouthful. Walt Ackerman.
Earl Walagorski, commission member.
Karen Walagorski, commission member.
Mary Cartwright, commission member.
Bob Morgan, commission member. Historic commission member.
Sandy Hammerly, trustee.
Mark Lasis, trustee. Martin Toth, I'm on town staff.
Chris Hansen, trustee.
Brian Meyer, staff liaison.
Rita Dozell, trustee.
And in the back. Oh. Carol.
Gladys Worshing, Darryl McCool, and then I'm mayor.
Great, thanks for coming. Okay, we've got a couple of things on the agenda as possible discussion items, and we can add others as ideas come up. We've got future cemetery access, historical presence in town and center development, work with CAPS, the Cultural Arts and Public Spaces Advisory Committee, and Grasso Park structure in future use of park. Is there any particular order we'd like to start in? And since Larry's not here, anybody want to kind of take the lead on
Ms. Mary's.
Oh, no, I'm the chairman of vice for our committee, so.
Okay, great.
Actually, Mayor Clint, why don't you just go ahead, because you've got it there on your laptop, and
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, great. Why don't we start with future cemetery access? Were there particular concerns that you all had around that issue, or what?
Yes, there is. If I may, unless you would.
No.
Back, I believe, when the commissions started their discussion with the town developer. Remember when we were down in the fire station down there, and we brought up the fact at that time that we wanted to have a road access up to the cemetery, and we also discussed with them at the time that we would like to have had a small parking lot up there. And I believe we said something like 6 or 8 vehicles. It wasn't like we were looking for something huge, and perhaps just gravel. We weren't looking for a blacktop paved thing. And I guess now our concern is that we're not going to get it in there, because they're talking about parking over here in the parking lot at the ice rink, and then people walking up the hill on that path up there. And one of my concerns is people want to get up in there once we can get to that cemetery, and there's people out of Louisville who like to get up there to the grave. They have family buried up there. And some of them in the past, and I don't know if they're still alive or not, were really not able to walk up there. And I think my concern is if that's a path is going to actually adequately address the ADA issue. And I feel that, there's a road up there that goes along that pipeline up there. I think it's a maintenance road, and that I think should be made into a decent access to get up there to the cemetery. So that's
I'll add that if I can. If that's
sure,
well.
certainly, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say that the Historical Commission gave me a letter at the last meeting, and we gave that to Matt, and I don't know why it wasn't in the packet here. So I think it would be good that to the town board of the concerns, and particularly things like the access to the cemetery. So I think we all should get a copy of that before our next meeting. I thought it was gonna be in our packet, but it's
I'm
not.
sorry, I didn't see it. I'll ask Matt.
Yeah, David actually handed it to Matt right after our meeting. The Historical Commission had signed a letter stating their concerns, and then we gave it to Matt. So, and as Wally said, that cemetery access, not just a 10-foot wide concrete path, but an actual road up to the cemetery, which there always was a road access to the cemetery with a parking lot on the east side by the gate. It just so happened that the road access was under 36 and then got closed off when 36 was redone. But then that was back a few years ago when that was agreed to, that would be closed, that access, that there would be an access through the town center up to the cemetery. And even before I got on the board of trustees, I know I would always make comment as a resident that we need to maintain a road access. And that 30-foot wide access along the north and east side, that is for the irrigation ditch that's going to be buried under there. It's a maintenance road, it's an easement, it's 30-foot wide with a turnaround right on the north side of that was one conversation that was held many times with the developer, including, like Wally said, when they met with them at the fire station, that road, which has to be there, it's just a gravel road, but it'll be an access, that should be considered as a way to get to the cemetery.
Absolutely, because if people try and get up in there, especially if they're on walkers or wheelchairs, to try and get up there and get on that gravel path up there or whatever's up there, it's just not going to cut it.
So we have to formalize to make sure that you can get to that 30-foot. However, the irrigation people are going to get to it and have a pickup drive along it or a car drive along it. We need to be able to have that access also for people that need to get to the cemetery.
Plus, there's another thing I think to consider. That's not a closed cemetery. That's an open cemetery. If I'm correct.
Still an active cemetery.
So somewhere in the future, and I don't know if anybody will ever want to, but if they decides in the future that people want to use that cemetery and have their family buried in up there, then we need to have an adequate way to get up in there, even for the people to get up to the gravesite to do that on that particular day. You know?
Is that possible to be? I thought it was off limits to be from this point forward, or from many years ago forward, that you couldn't be buried there.
Well, at one time, I believe that was what the theory was, and then I thought I had heard since then that was not a closed cemetery. Now, I can't say that for sure. I don't know.
Yeah, we heard that in one of our meetings not too long ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Spicer had wanted to be buried there, but then because there was no way to get equipment up there to actually dig his grave.
Well, they were told that was a closed cemetery and they couldn't do it. And then after he went over to Louisville, they found out that supposedly that was an open cemetery. So there's maybe a conflict in there, and somehow maybe the town should think about addressing that and say yes or no.
It's also a historic landmark, and I think that's important for you guys to know that that's what is in Superior, and it's important.
Yep.
We don't have 150 special historic things in Superior like other towns do. So it's very important for people to be able to access it. We haven't been able to have our cemetery, what is it, in the tour? Yeah, in 2 years.
Cemetery tour in September, yeah, for what, about 3 years
now? And there's
now?
not that many events that we have to promote. You know, we have 3 or 4 a year, and it's important that it's been.
Yeah, the Tombstone Tour was a pretty popular function.
Yeah, we had quite a few people come to that.
In terms of access, though, the intention is for it to remain locked. It's not.
Well, that part's probably okay, you know, trying to keep people out of there. I mean, they'd have to come through the town hall down here to get access. I don't think there's any objection to that. We'd like to be able to get to it.
So I guess my question is, if you've got a locked facility that is really only accessible when you've got a guided tour, you've got someone taking you there and unlocking it, do we really need 6, 8, whatever the number is, parking spaces at the site if whoever's getting there is going to be escorted in by? I mean, I agree with road access, not an issue, but I'm just I'm not clear on why we need parking for something that's gonna be so limited? You know,
Well,
such a
is it
limited
locked?
amount of
How is
use?
it locked today?
There's a padlock on it.
Is there a padlock, but what?
Combination.
Combination.
But would there need to be, there would never used to be, you could always go in there, so must have gotten locked in the last 5 or 6 years, probably.
It's been locked since, well, the scouts would go up there, and for 8 years ago, we'd go up there and we had to get the combination.
When the fence went up
When the fence
around
went
it.
in, people would leave the gate open.
Okay.
And prairie dogs would go back in.
Okay, I see, because, you know, I haven't walked up there for a long time, but we used to walk up there a lot before.
By the way, I'm Kevin Ryan, apologies for being late. Is there a need? I understood the lock and the prairie dog prevention, but since there's not a colony anymore, what's the compelling reason for a lock?
Well, there's Civil War headstones there, graves there, and I think that it's a good idea to keep it locked. But I also think that it would be nice to have parking up there and access, because on an annual basis, at least a couple times a year, scouts would go up there and help maintain it.
Right.
And clean it up, and it'd be nice if it was easily accessible. I think I could see students at Superior Elementary taking field trips there.
No, I totally agree, and I'm not wanting to sound like I'm opposing it, I'm just trying to understand the logic of the number of spaces. I mean, last time I went up there with Matt, it was knee-high in weeds and you know,
But that's because we can't get up there. You know, we haven't been able to
So
get
let
up
me just
there.
re-ask the question. Is the concern really vandalism?
No.
Okay, so what's the
No, there
primary
isn't
reason?
vandalism.
Right.
There is vandalism,
I
but
think
that
there's
wasn't
two
the reason why it was
primary
locked.
reasons.
It was a combination of reasons.
One is for people
That was
who
more.
have family buried there that want to bring flowers and they can't walk up there. And I know that happens during Memorial Day.
Right.
And they get to keep them here and go up and put flowers. I think the other thing you have to be careful of is ADA. If somebody starts complaining about, well, I can't get up there because I can't walk up there and there's no.
No, I totally agree with the road and the parking, and I'm all in on that. I guess my question, I just want to go back, the question is about the lock on the gate. I mean, I walked up there probably 5, 6 years ago, and just kind of walked around and saw the gate and lock, and figured out, I don't want to get myself in trouble, so I went the other way, but I'm just curious.
That was vandalism.
So, could
Well,
we,
it wasn't just that. If they left the door open, then the prairie dogs were going back in there. There were a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
that left the gate open.
right,
And then the prairie dogs went back in and started burrowing down into the graves.
but if there's no, which is, you know, we should prevent, of course, but I don't think there's currently a colony anywhere near there with the development. So if there's no prairie dog colony, is there, again, apologies for being late, because I'm excited, I think this is great, I think it's a great part of our history, I think it's cool, so I'm just curious, could we
leave it open?
Could we leave it open, and if the primary objectives were vandalism, we could certainly close it at night, and now there's going to be an increased presence there at night, so if there are kids there, or anybody there at night, it would be spotted pretty easily, right? Because there's going to be a neighborhood in there, near there. And if the prairie dogs
The
are
gate
good.
doesn't swing back and forth if you're not gonna lock it.
You can have a gate that, an individual gate, a walk-through gate that would close automatically. It's easy to create that.
Oh, spring,
The bigger-
spring.
The bigger, yeah, the bigger gates are, but it just, it was up there without a fence and anything for over 100 years, you know?
There was a
and-
fence put around that in 1975 by Boulder County.
Right, but then it was down, and then George Menkick actually paid to put that fence up that's there now, to keep the prairie dogs out. We went in and removed the prairie dogs and then put that fence up so that it would be a barrier, they can't see into there, and then they wouldn't go in there. Because they were actually bringing up bones and parts of the caskets and things like that, so the prairie dogs were. So it's a good thing to have gotten the prairie dogs out, but I don't know any, and there used to be a lot more trucks and cars and vandalism the first 10 years I lived here, because I would call the sheriff deputy all the time, because there were kids out there driving around all the time, and then going up to the cemetery, and I'd always call them and go out there. That's when they could get under from the other side and come under the highway. And now, it's hard to get up there except if you're walking up there. If you're gonna walk up there and vandalize, you're gonna crawl all over the fence. You're not gonna wait for them, or you're gonna cut the pedal off.
That's right.
Yeah, so
It's not as secluded as it was. I think the vandalism that
Right.
everybody's referring to, or a lot of, it seemed like teenagers who go up there and drink and maybe knock headstones over and do some
Right.
other kind of random acts of vandalism. That would probably be the other overarching addition to the prairie dog.
Yeah.
But without it being so isolated, it might not be as attractive any longer.
I personally would love to see it open, but certainly would love to hear from the Historical Commission.
Actually, even with the lock, people just have to come, ask the town, they give them the combination, they go and open it. So it's, I think the lock is a good idea. It prevents everybody just walking in and out, and people with a purpose, it's readily available to.
Although if we can follow through with the parking spaces, then you want people to be able to be up there and
Yeah.
access it.
There
And
used
not
to-
leave, you
Right.
know, not leave, you know, go up, walk up and walk back down.
The flat area is still there, I believe.
Yeah, the flat area is there in the
Where
area
the
of reflection.
gravel parking was in front on the east side of the fence, you know, along, the CDOT trail is there, but it didn't encroach on what was the parking lot, so it's still there.
So I think that would be easy to just go in there and put some gravel or something in there. I don't think I haven't been up there in quite a while, I don't think you even have to do any grading or anything in there. But I could be wrong, because it's been probably 3 years
Yeah,
since
we
I've been
used
up
to
in there.
park up there all the time.
Yeah, we used to park up
Just
there all the time.
informally.
So what do we need to do to solve this dilemma?
It's not so much a dilemma, it's just that we have to formalize that we need to require that there is road access as the developer completes that area, and that some of that landscaping is part of this FDP 1.1 that we just approved last month. So we need to make sure that it is there and the access is going to be, well, I'm not sure where to access that road from, whether you access it from the east or from the west or from the north or behind Boulder Valley Ice. And so I would just like to have that formalized and make sure we know where the historical commission members and family members will be able to access that, if that's what we're going to use, that irrigation road that's there, that easement. It's going to be a 30-foot wide easement that will be for trucks and other equipment. It's kind of like a Frigo ditch behind, you know, on the south side of the property. That will be a road there that could be used.
So Martin, is this something that staff can take care of, or is this something that the board need to get more involved in?
We can look at it again. The access has always been included from the southeast side of, or the south side of the sports stable building, to have the path go up and be able to access the flat area that's always been referred to as kind of the reflection area. And as the plans for that park are finalized, I'll come back and we'll be glad to work through some options to have maybe a different surface there.
But that's the 10-foot wide concrete path, which you would take a city truck on if someone wanted to get up there, which you're talking about. Or is that what you're talking about?
That path has always been included.
Yes, I
and
know
the
that, but
parking
not as a
surface that I
car
think-
access.
Well, the mayor asked about the parking surface at the top, so if we wanted to rethink what that surface looks like or what that final design is going to look like, well, let's take a crack at it.
Okay. Bigger issue is not the parking, but how to get to the parking spots that are there
So
already.
can anybody drive on that path, or is that going to be kind of a restricted path? Is that-
Well, it would have bollards on it that could be removed. That's always what the board had.
The 10-foot wide
Contemplated.
concrete path, it was not meant for anybody to just drive on. It would be, you know, there was maybe a special event or something, then they'd take the bollards off and probably take a city truck, you know, up there. That doesn't seem, it never has been what the desire was to have an access that allows family members and others and events to happen, you know, for an access to get up there.
Okay, so is there some other access point that?
Well,
That's what we've been talking about, that
So the
30-foot
easement that
wide
Rita's referring
easement.
to does go around the other side. We can look at that, but it's still going to need to be a controlled access that isn't publicly accessible that anybody can drive up
Right.
on. So it's a maintenance road first. The bollard area would be removable bollards that any vehicle could drive on. It wouldn't necessarily be a town truck if there were a special event or somebody that wanted to
Right.
get up there. And it's usually, like Wally mentioned, it's Memorial Day. There's some special times of year when it makes sense
Right.
for a greater level of public interest in accessing the area.
Right.
And that's, I think, what we'd always plan on coordinating with staff. If we wanted to add a second option to use that path, we can look at that and give the board some options.
See, when you just talk about that, to have that, let's say, for example, they have the first Saturday of the month, they have the museum open. You could say the first Saturday of the month is when the access to the cemetery is open too. You know, you could have it scheduled at the first Saturday of the month in the summertime. Don't necessarily need to go in the winter probably, but I'm just saying that as a possibility or as an option.
Sure, as the development happens, it'll be a busy park. You know, all
Right,
year.
I don't think the desire is to have it where once or twice a year, someone comes to the town and says, could you please allow me up to the cemetery? There has to be more general access at more times than just once or twice for one or two people that want to go up there. Is that what you're saying?
Accessible, it needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
Right.
Another thing. and I
Without a
will-
lot of,
Even if it's scheduled accessibility,
Right.
it just needs to be accessible.
Another thing, I believe, when we were at that meeting at the fire station, the developer was talking about the entrance into the cemetery. They were gonna put a big archway in there. They were gonna make that a really nice looking area in there. So, you know, that all needs to come together, I think, and that would come in, I think, also give better access in there and to have where you could drive up in there.
Martin, has that FDP come forward, or is it part of Park 3?
That's Park 3.
Okay, so we've not had that FDP? Okay, so I
and
think...
hopefully you
The
guys
dog
can-
park side is included on
Yeah,
the
so
north side of the
Parks.
cemetery is
Yeah.
part of it, and the slope on this west side of the cemetery is part of DP11.
If
So
you think of that kind of dog garden area, that
Yeah.
was the splitting point.
would you agree that these requests can be articulated at that time?
Oh, sure.
If staff's
Yeah, absolutely.
aware of them, as you now are, when the developer comes forward, you can articulate this and hopefully...
And our letter
Yeah.
is a really nice letter. There's lots of good information in it.
Okay, yeah, so that FDP will really be where the details,
Right.
where we get to see the details, you'll get to see the details, and we'll all say, does this work, or does this?
And
And
it
when is
doesn't
that?
necessarily require 6 or 8 parking spots, it can make it just 2.
Probably next year.
Well, we want more than two.
So it's
We make
probably,
one, But we don't get one.
Well, that's what we.
there's a question about timing, there was a question about timing, when is that detail coming before us?
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah,
Maybe next year,
Martin
best
says,
guess.
Martin says probably next year.
yeah, that's fine.
Now, another thing while we're on the cemetery that I would like to, and I don't know, maybe this has already been covered, but up on this end, right over here behind the ice rink where they got up real close to that corner up there, has been or will it be in the future addressed to where that bank is taken care of, to where that won't wash out? Because that's up, what,
So tell me
within
which
5
one?
feet of the fence up there or something like that?
The northwest corner of the cemetery.
Yes.
Where it was graded? since
Yeah,
you-
that was
Yeah.
where they got really close to the fence up there.
So that's
They
what
said
is
they-
in the FDP one. We
Right.
just-
It is.
So that should be in this.
They said they had to do it to get equipment there, and they're gonna put it back, but they did not put it back because they put a big driveway behind the building.
Yeah.
Right.
So that FDP has been approved, so there should hopefully be some detail in there to get that.
Because there's 3 or 4 foot of chain link fence underneath that fence, underneath the wrought iron fence, and we wanted to make sure that doesn't, we get some heavy rain start to wash out on that bank there and start exposing that chain link fence.
Martin, you could do that administratively, you know.
Yes,
To
yeah, if I-
work, to do that, just, I wouldn't have to come back to the board. You could actually go back and say, okay, this is administrative or whatever.
Yeah,
you
something
call
that
it.
can be done in the
Yeah.
field.
Right.
Yeah, I'll follow up on.
Yeah, follow up on that, because they, you know, that western slope off of the, I'm talking about the western slope off the edge of the cemetery is
Mhm.
very steep.
Is the side closest to the sports table?
And it's the
Yeah.
corner right closest to the sports stable, the northwest corner. It's just,
We had lots of concerns about that
Lots of
expressed,
concerns.
yeah.
and then again, and when we had the groundbreaking ceremony for the Florida Ice Building, the sports stable, that's when the developer and the project manager were out there, I was walking along with Wally and others, you know, I don't know if Walt was there or Bob or not, but I know, and they
Karen
were telling, and
probably
Karen was there, yeah. And that's when they were telling you that they were gonna put that dirt back.
Yeah.
They were gonna restore some of that, so instead of being like this, they were gonna restore it, make it look a little
Yeah,
more.
there's even a little stair step in there.
Right,
Gonna terrace it?
Yeah.
but that was then, and now we got different people. Different people.
Different people? Oh,
From
different.
the developer
Uh-huh.
side of the house.
So I'll be glad to check on that.
Okay, so we'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on cemetery? Okay. Historical presence in town center development.
I think that's Lindsay's.
That was my thing. Yeah, I was just thinking about how the Historical Commission wants to sort of see ourselves in the future. And since obviously the new area is on everybody's minds right now, just thinking about how we could have a presence on that side of town. And we talked about a few things like the railroad, where the railroad road where the railroad used to be, and obviously the cemetery, and then maybe having like a statue similar to the one over by Target, or something like that, on that side of town.
Sure.
Just starting to think about ideas for that.
And you went to the CAPS meeting too, and you were represented the Historical Commission.
Right.
Last CAPS meeting, so that was great.
I'll throw out a free idea. A bunch of you guys were over, of course, at Firehouse Subs with the great newly painted historic fire truck. And I just had an idea, it probably will be somewhat expensive, is to actually have that housed behind glass window with actually a garage door, so it can actually be brought in and out for events and stuff. But rather than hide it in a garage off premises forever, except the few times a year you use it, to actually have it be on display, because it's so super cool with Superior Fire State, whatever, what the brand, the label on it.
Your fire department.
Yeah, and so I'd like to investigate that at least and see what that would cost. I'm not sure where it would go, but I've already, CAPS got together over the weekend to work on a project for Arbor Day, and I mentioned it to CAPS, so for some thought, I thought.
I think, go ahead.
Well, my husband and I talked about that further after your idea, and we just got more and more excited, really, about having it out where people can see it, sheltered on the south and west and east, and then, you know, whatever kind of visible doors and or visible whatever, and the people can see it. And behind that, we have your interpretive signs with the history and, yeah.
Well, there will be public space, you know, within the development down there in the town square plaza, and I could see that, you know, potentially some design this could somehow be incorporated into that.
And you don't even have to have a sculptor sculpt it. You know?
Right.
Yes, need to figure out how to house it.
You Parks and Recreation people now relocated over to the ice house, right? That permanent move? What are you gonna do with that property over there?
Permanent.
Well, they have whole cars sitting over there.
Yes.
You could relocate it maybe over here to the new site over here.
Sure.
As part of your
Well, I think that needs to stay where it's at. That's an original Superior. And I think that whole car needs to stay.
Well, you wanted to have the, you already got one in here.
I'd ask
I
you.
know that.
You got one right up here at the park.
Park, yeah.
So, whatever, but I thought, you know, if you wanted, you know, the history of Superior, and Cole was a big history of Superior, that should be maybe part of it, you know.
Or to have a whole hallway in some part of the town, right? Like a walking area. We
Yeah,
talked about the
yeah,
sports stable too, like
Yeah.
a neat area outside viewing with the coal car and the.
I think that's a real way for Historical Commission and CAPS to collaborate.
What is the town thinking about doing with that piece of property? Is that going to stay in the town, or is the town thinking about maybe getting rid of that?
The Parks and Rec building.
Yeah, the old one.
the current plan is to tear down that building and just leave it.
Okay.
And retain it as town-owned property. We don't have any immediate plans for it, but.
That might be a reason then to move that out of there.
Well, we were gonna, I thought the coal car was supposed to be moved anyway because of
Yeah.
the vandalism thing last year.
Yeah, trying to drag it out in the street here a couple of years.
Yeah, last Halloween, or
Yeah.
a year ago or a couple
Yeah,
years ago.
So in terms of other ways to kind of promote the historical presence over there, we already had an inquiry from, or had a resident who was familiar with Starbucks, the new Starbucks over there, express interest in getting some historical pictures into the Starbucks. And so I gotta believe that other businesses are probably like that as well. They would welcome some artwork that was specific to the town. So I think those kind of opportunities, and at Firehouse, they probably love a picture of the old fire truck on their wall.
Oh,
So
certainly.
I think things like that, we should always be thinking of, okay, new business, what could, how could they help us to kind of put little bits and pieces. And that way when, different people are going to go into different businesses, but the more places we can have history on display, the better.
Several years back, staff put together a whole computer file, right, of all the historical photos we have. So reproducing those should be a breeze.
Yes, the files themselves, we have on our network, and I've given it to one or two businesses over the years when I was still a liaison with the Historical Commission. So they're easy to find if somebody wants to have them printed, and provide courtesy for whoever owns the photo, noting who originally belongs to, that'd be great.
So I think we can move on that Starbucks idea.
I thought you were, weren't you talking to them already, Martin? Or someone was talking to and giving them access to the photos?
I don't know, it wasn't me, I didn't.
Oh, Matt had said that
Somebody
someone
mentioned it, but I wanted to
mentioned
that
it
might have
already.
it as a
In a
follow-up.
weekly digest, I'm sure he mentioned that he had provided access to the photos to the owners over there. So we should follow up on that though, because if they
I think
clearly
that's
asked you if they could do that, and we should help them.
We can all make that happen.
You got Tim.
Yeah, Katie, don't you think we should have the staff do it?
Yeah,
I
but
always like to-
if you need to help, we can
Yeah, you
contact
can,
as well.
right, that'd be good.
There were photos at one time down in the old pizza parlor that was down there by Safeway.
I think that was the first time that you and I talked about this, was
Yeah.
when
No,
it was,
not those.
Not down by the
By
Safeway.
Safeway?
it's not Serrano, the previous.
Rock Creek Pizza.
Rock Creek Pizza,
Yeah.
the simple one.
Oh.
Rock Creek.
I know all those pizza places.
Now, did they take those photos, those pictures with them at the time, or did they come back to the town?
They didn't, they were printed on their own dime, and
Oh,
I never
okay.
saw them.
Okay.
We just provided, I think I gave somebody from their staff a CD with those pictures on it.
Yeah, they had some really good ones in there, so.
Now, and talking about Old Railway, and Gladys had sent over some pictures of seating, different kinds of benches that were some pretty cool, and we found some of those in different Pinterest, architectural, urban spaces kind of thing. But there was one that was really cool, that was, looked like old railway rails
Loop track.
that were looped and then they'd come down and create a place to sit on, and they were so cool. And it was actually a bench, but it was a structural, architectural kind of a thing. It looked like rail ties, not ties, rails themselves that were kind of looped and bent and everything. And we said, oh, wouldn't that be cool to put like a bench like that, a structural architectural feature along Old Railway, the street, because we've got it named that. It's actually named that, the street is. So that would be something to do. And
I think that idea.
that came to CAPS, didn't it? I think, Lindsay, didn't you take it to CAPS, or you?
No, not me.
Okay.
Gladys did. Gladys did.
It's in your file, Daryl. Yeah, right. Okay. But those kind of things would be interesting to tie in to some of those things, find something, not just a signature, but
Reinforces the
something more
history in a
useful.
contemporary
It actually created a bench seating, but it looked like that someone had taken the rail and just wound them up and made them all curly Q.
That sort of ties into our next, we've sort of already gone to item C, working with CAPS Advisory Committee. So I think a lot of these working with downtown Superior are going to be things where the two can kind of collaborate on ideas and photos and projects and art and things like that. So, any additional thoughts on those items? Daryl, did you have anything?
I have an idea, and Cass is about placemaking, and one of the things that I've been thinking about.
Daryl, do you want to come over that way we can get you on the
Sure.
microphone?
We have the book Lost Superior, but there are currently at least 12, maybe 15 homes that are not lost, that are still in existence, that are over 100 years old. And just one afternoon, I went around and I took some photos and found all of the years that these homes were built in, just simple. And I would love,
30.
there may be more. These were ones that I just, I could actually find the dates on and things like that. And so I just kind of put together a quick PowerPoint on what those homes were, why we want to preserve those homes, why it's important to honor them, and thinking about expanding the walking tour. If we can't walk up to the cemetery, can we walk around original town and get people that are interested in either opening their homes, or we look at them from the outside. Mine's 116 years old, and the stories that I hear about it are just fabulous. One of the little outbuildings was rolled across the yard and put where it currently stands on telephone poles. So they're just really neat little things about these homes. They're all quirky for sure, but they're something to.
Could you actually put a post up with a placard at each one, so you could do the self-guided tour?
Absolutely, if people wanted to do that. They're also, back east, a lot of the historic homes have a placard that just says, simply when it was built. And I remember when I first moved here, every time we ordered pizza from Bruno's, they were like, "Oh, you're in the care house." It didn't matter what our number was. They just knew us by this certain house, not by who we were or anything, but it was the care house. So.
That's really cool.
It even has it around if people want to look at it. So that was just one idea in terms of placemaking and a way to expand into the Historic Commission.
Well, we've been working on walking tour ideas, I guess, but Jill isn't here, so. Yeah, we hadn't really talked about residential stuff like that.
No, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a couple of tours a year. One, the historic one, up to the mine site, which is a ways to walk and all that. So it takes a while for the different one for around town and by the old town hall and
Schoolhouse.
Yeah. So I think that's a really fun idea.
And then we talked about doing digital walking tour stuff as well.
And that's one of the things that the CAPS group is doing. The Parks Department already has done it. They've done this wayfinding. So if you go and look online, you can go and find every park in Superior, and there's a description of the park. And we're talking about, and I think the art is almost ready to launch. And it would be cool if you wanted to do historic places. You could do the cemetery. It'd be kind of cool to go in and take photos of the Civil War gravestone up there, and have that be the wayfinding for people as well.
And we're just, so they had a survey of the town to see how many historic residential structures there still are. So we do have all that information in one place.
Nice.
There was a survey taken many years ago by Catherine Barth and a group of people went through it and went over to Carnegie Library and went through all of the tax files back there to determine what homes are of a historic value.
And see which ones still even resemble what they looked like and which ones are changed so much that you can't even tell that they were historic.
Right.
But it's never been done for any non-residential
I can't remember how many
properties.
homes were designated.
There were different designations.
20 or 30, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like
30
that.
or
Yeah,
32 maybe, Alex, you were saying.
Jack and I did the list, and the list was given to the town.
And then the one other idea I had is oral history. As a couple of my neighbors are getting older and older, some of those stories that they tell are, if they're not passed down, they're lost. And I was thinking not just original town folks, but there's this fabric of our town that is, original town was here, then Rock Creek was brought in, and there are people that have been living up there 20, 25 years, and their oral history is important as well, and the history of when Sagamore went in. So there's these really neat fabrics of this town, not just the old, but the new, but people have been here for a long time. So I was thinking, even just at Arbor Days or 4th of July or something, if we had an oral history booth and people could go in and talk about why they like Superior or how long they, just some, you could free form it, or we could actually give them a guided response. But some way to capture some of that so that we have.
Wasn't Jill Roberts doing something on oral history?
Then her job changed, and now she's having a little bit of struggle trying to keep up with it.
Okay.
But the thought is that you go to Grasso Park and you click a QR code, and on your phone, the video comes up of Bob talking about, or whatever, being at the school. You go to somewhere else and you click it, and the video comes up, and or just the verbal, maybe not a video, but. So we've done a lot of collecting and trying, when people come to the museum, Jill kind of tried to train people on just start to ask them questions and video it. So we kind of have to figure out what to do with all that.
Yeah, and there are quite a few oral histories through the Boulder Public Library, as well as stuff that the Historical Commission already has. So I think that once we have it cataloged and know exactly what's there, and then can add to it.
And then how do we get people to have access to it? I mean, I'd love to. It sounds like you guys are doing a ton of things, but how the public gets to it, I think is.
Yeah, and we've also talked about website presence and stuff like that.
And some of them, like the ones with the QR, are just on the post, you have access to them. You can do that with houses. That's what Williamsburg used to have, lots of tours, and now they have more and more of the QR tours at Williamsburg.
There was a lady out of, her name was, I believe, Shirley Steele, and she was out of Carnegie Library down in Boulder, and she did some from some of the people here.
Yeah, she did a number of them. Well, didn't she do it with you, Bob?
Yeah, Shirley
And
Steele.
Denzel?
Yeah, Shirley.
She has a number of oral histories done already.
There's a bunch from.
Jill was just going to add to that.
There's a bunch from 2002, and then there's some from the 1970s, and then we've got some just for the Historical Commission for when the museum house was brought over as well.
So slowly we're getting there.
And we don't have a brochure yet. That was something we talked about here last year too, and we're getting closer. But somehow, if we can have some type of website or some type of link, we could include that in a brochure that people, and the brochure's everywhere. You hand it out when you do the walking tour. It's at the museum, it's at the town, it's all over, that people can access that. So that would be good.
Good. Lots of good things on their way.
We aren't lacking anything to do.
Yeah, that's
good.
No, and we want to be sure as the cultural arts and placemaking, we're incorporating, we've got ideas, and you guys have done a lot of work, and so how do we make it all
And I think these are all important things that we have to remember as we go along, that this is a lot I've lived here for 20 years, and a lot's happened in 20 years.
Well, and an easy way is just as you participated in CAPS can send a person over to attend the Historical Commission, so one committee always knows what the others do.
Good.
And I guess I'd like to just add, please, to all of you and the town board, thank you again for your grant. Truck is getting the inside done now as we speak, and the inside should be done by 4th of July.
That's
great.
great.
We're grateful for your support.
Who's doing the interior work? Where's that getting done?
Is that Mile High Classics in Denver?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, they're the ones that did the paint job last year, yeah.
We don't want to fumigate the city employee that drives it. That doesn't like that.
Been doing some exhaust work to fix the, yeah, I noticed when I got in it, it had a little bit of a exhaust. That's why they drive it with the windows down. Yeah.
We tried to fumigate you too, huh?
It was parked, it wasn't even running.
Well,
It's great to see that, it's great to see that project come together. And, it was great to see it running, and then it's great to see it painted and running, and now the.
Well, Wally needs to bring something else up that we need to help accomplish. Do
Oh,
you want me
yeah.
to say it, or you tell Wally? Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I brought this up before, and I've been turned down, and I've said I will not let this issue go, and I will not. So tonight, I'm going to try and poke the bear with a stick again. Counting what we spent on the fire truck so far, and that's not counting the restoration that's going on now, you're talking probably somewhere around $30,000. Counting getting it started, you know, where we can start it up running it, paint it. And to only have this truck come out, say, on the 4th of July, and like we did over here, you know, maybe a couple of times a year, with the money we're going to totally spend on this, which is going to be, what, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $55,000, it's kind of a waste to only bring it out once or twice. So what I'm thinking is we should probably try and get it into maybe Louisville, some of their stuff. We could get it into Lafayette on some of their stuff. Here's something here, just what we spent to get it to run.
Museum openings?
So you're talking getting it out to other community parades.
Getting out to other
And
community
we'd like
parades.
it in the summer in front of the.
I also, Larry Dorsey and I last summer talked to a Bill Keller, who is, I don't know if he's still the fire marshal of the town of Superior, Lafayette, or if he's retired. But I have a picture here, and we can pass this around. This was taken in 1953, and that's Superior's fire truck sitting in Lafayette. That's when they still had the thing. They want us to bring that over this summer, and they'd like to do a photo shoot in front of with their. So what I'm getting at, if we're going to start taking this thing around, I think what we would like to see is at least 2 members of the Historical Commission be able to be able to drive this thing and to get it out to some of these facilities. I'm sure, I realize, I understand there's insurance things in there, there's all types of stuff, but I'd really like to see the town make a real big-time effort to somehow work this out. I brought this up here a while back, and I had mentioned that with Brian. Brian is the one that is basically the keeper of the keys, so to speak. And we would have to go through Brian, obviously, get permission, let him know where it's at, what we're doing, how long we're going to have it, so that it's totally under the control of the town. So it's just not 2 guys out driving the thing around. And
On a Saturday night, you're all driving around.
Yeah. And get this thing out to some of these events. And I realize that Matt from the town staff, and he's doing a good job. I'm not saying anything about that, but we're going to get this thing out, and even sometimes during the week to some of this stuff. It's a little hard, I think, for some of the town employees maybe to get away, and that would be a good thing for a couple of the commission members to be able to do. Get it over here to the museum on the Saturdays that we're open on display. So that's where I'm at.
And to add to that, there was, the answer back has always been that we can't from an insurance perspective. Well, we all know that we can. You can. You just have to be trained. You have to be named. And, and they have to be controlled of who drives it. So we need to figure out what we have to do administratively with the insurance company to allow named people that are trained to operate the vehicle be able to do so for the town, rather than just 1 or 2 townspeople. And I think it's a legitimate need that they have to be able to have someone other than a staff person drive it.
Well, at one time, the thought was that they were reluctant to do it because only town employees can drive it. So they were therefore afraid that we were going to then be able to drive all town vehicles. And I think you can put a restriction of some kind in there where it's only the fire truck, period. Obviously under town's control.
Whatever is required should be looked into. I mean, there's, you work for, you know, there's no, I've never heard of a
We
restriction.
have 5 different vehicles at the food bank, and anybody can, once we go through the process of training them, we just add them onto our insurance. And it's not costing us an insane amount of money to have multiple drivers on there. Now, I don't know, but, you know, obviously I can't speak for the town's liability, but we're a nonprofit organization, and we just add drivers on and we take drivers off. So now, I don't know whether there's special requirements on that truck, but I don't know why. I mean, it seems reasonable to me.
It's street allowable now, street worthy or street
legal.
legal.
Yeah.
So it's street legal, and once the interior is done, it's really gonna be better than most of our cars that we drive, better than my car. You know, more expensive than my car.
It's not your intention to be taking it to Los Angeles, you're just talking about, you know, you're just talking about being able to drive it locally.
So
pretty
like
much.
buying
So from
this
that
Probably
standpoint,
as far as Denver.
yeah, I mean, you know, you're not talking
Was it a tractor or a lawnmower?
So I'm-
big
I'm-
issues of driving it in weird areas, so I don't know why.
I'm not hearing any objection from the boards. I think
Yeah.
from the board's standpoint, we're supportive of the concept. We just kind of
I have to defer to the attorney.
need to defer.
Oh, absolutely.
From a concept of getting it out there, that we've made this great investment, and it
That's
should be, you know, there's, I mean, why it's not available for somebody, you know, how cool would it be that thing shows up at your 8-year-old's birthday party, you know, I mean, it should be.
For like the chili, you know,
side
all
job
of
for
the
you.
events.
I don't want to drive my own car much as this one,
Yeah.
but, so I'm out, but keeping it scheduled and not just a few times a year, I think is a great idea, and, you know.
Or at the Jeff and Paige concert.
Right.
The kids go nuts. I've seen that.
Now, to
And
get
it
back,
promotes, it's kind of the symbol of us
Yep.
now, and
Yep.
we, you know, we don't have tons of people coming to the museum, but it's a really great, it's our symbol, and it should be out there.
Yeah, and if you had it out there, then people would recognize that the museum's open too, that would be cool.
to get back to this picture I have, this fire marshal out of Lafayette was telling Larry and myself, there's a ladder hanging on the side here. He believes they have one of the ladders that was on this fire truck. If we can get it over there to the photo shoot, that ladder will go to our truck. They also have, there's an axe on the side of the truck. They said they have an actual fire axe that they will give us. They have a Spalding tool that there's a place on the driver's side of this, which is to tighten hoses together, they will give us. And there's also a bracket on the fender on the driver's side for a hose nozzle, and they said they will supply us with one of those. So it would.
4 reasons to get it over.
Really reason to go there. Except now we'll have to get that painted red, and that'll cost another $5,000, that little bracket.
No. So anyway, I just think if we, now obviously, you know, as far as getting it around to various parades, et cetera, that's not all gonna happen this year, but we can start getting it in the works.
That's great. Okay.
Well, is there already a plan in place to take it to the local schools on occasion for?
No, we have no.
But you could.
I'm not saying we can,
The
I'm
fire
just saying we don't have a
department
plan,
does
no.
that each year. They go to the schools, just to have the fire department day or whatever, and I think it'd be great if the truck went there.
Oh, certainly.
At
We
the
wouldn't
same
have a
time they
problem
do.
doing that.
Yeah. Just like the
All-
second grade.
All
field
kinds
trip.
of things we can
Yeah.
do.
That'd be cool.
Well,
Keep
we could
Gilson.
have it out when the field trips come in
Sure.
September too.
Yes.
But we run out of time as it is, so adding another thing for them to look at maybe is not a good idea.
I think we could, well, that'd be a discussion for the group, but I think that could be extended if we had to add a half hour, an hour, because they, right after they're done, they go to the park and hang out for a while. Just as long as they get back to school by 2:15, I think they're willing to do that.
That'd be great.
All great ideas. Let's make sure we cover Grasso Park before we have to wrap up in about 7 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary.
Appreciate it.
Mary, did you want this picture?
Do you have it?
I do have it, yes. I didn't get it framed, but I did have a picture.
Grasso Park.
Anybody want to cover that, or?
Well,
I don't have a problem, but I don't want to hog the whole thing. Somebody else can say something.
I think that was your.
well, we've done some work on the house with downspouts and gutters to keep the wood from, the bottom of the wood from fraying from the water, splashing back up. And we cleaned out the barn and de-animalized the barn.
You're gonna have to do it again.
Decritterized.
Yeah.
Probably have to do it again. And we've looked at the floor, and there needs some work to be done to the floor, which we eventually hope to get to. And that whole addition piece still needs to be cleaned out. And the rest at Grasso is pretty much in good shape. Once we got the house redone with new siding. And we also put the same kind of gutters on the museum to keep water out of the basement, going down the steps and out in the basement. And that's all now going out into the grass, away from there. The equipment's all there yet, and is tied down enough that nobody, besides it's heavy, nobody wants to mess with the equipment. So it's been pretty safe.
Well, there's a couple of things that I would sort of like to think about. At Grasso Park, there's not necessarily anything wrong with it the way it is, but I think it could be better than what it is. And I don't know how to address that. We have a piece of equipment sits along the barn. That dates in that era, but basically the way it is now is just a rust bucket, so to speak, sitting there. So I don't know what we should do. If we should get in there, try and clean it up, perhaps paint it, get some tires on it, make it look respectable. Karen and I and Larry, I think where were we, over in Loveland or someplace, and went to a museum over there a couple of years ago, and they have similar piece of equipment sitting there, which is a Minneapolis Moline, which is really nice looking shape. And so there's just something we need to do to clean that up just a little bit. And I'm not saying totally get rid of anything, but maybe address the way we arrange it, how we make it look. It could be a little bit better.
Now, well, can I add to that? From the conversation we had at the last Historical Commission, there was some concern about safety, for kids crawling on it, and it's rusty, and it's got places where you could get hurt and things like that. So before considering spending money on trying to fix it, maybe we need to look at it and think about it. Would it be better to have that as grassy area to be able to create some kind of an event there through CAPS? I'm looking at Daryl. And then, or try and fix it in some way, and then you're going to have to continuously maintain it. So those are the two options to consider, is take a look at it, because the way it sits now, it's kind of actually a safety hazard for people and kids that want to climb up onto it, perhaps.
Well, there's a lot of that equipment, if kids climb on it, it's a safety hazard.
Yeah, so
I
that,
don't care
yeah,
what piece of equipment it is.
right. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the only reason to consider, but that's one thing that you were talking about at the last commission meeting too.
And another thing, this is getting back on Daryl's, if we're gonna open this up to some walking tours, maybe we need to get in, get the floor fixed in that barn and get that to where we can open up and have public access into that under supervision, of course, when we're doing some of these walking tours.
Is there anything in there to see other than the floor?
Snakes and critters.
Well, there isn't any, well, there's a couple of things stored in there now we're talking about getting rid of, but there's where they had horses in there one time, there's some stalls in there, there's a little bit. I had talked to George Kuffner here a while back, and I was going to try and see if he could get me hold of some harness board we can hang in there, and he said he'd take a look at it, see if he could. So we could put a few things in there and make it back to the era which is relevant to that time period. And
I have a horse collar I'll donate.
I'd like anything that's historic in town, just like the fire truck. I think it would be nice to have a plan in place that would redo everything so that people could see that and experience it Superior the way it was. The barn and the house itself, the way it's nice to go look at them. It'd be phenomenal to be able to go inside and actually see how life was lived in those days. You get a good idea from the museum, but I think it'd be nice to have the same thing done to the houses when they're restored. You could actually experience it.
Yeah, and maybe have more like pictures of the farming that went on.
That's kept locked, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But that needs to be addressed also, because the lock that's on there, there's probably not very many 8-year-olds that couldn't just bust that door out, and I'm serious, couldn't bust that out
I
the
thought we
same way.
had trouble with teenagers
Yeah,
using the
especially with
interior
the
of that.
door on the barn. The door on the barn, I realize it's a historic part of it, but it's not in real good shape, and I don't think it would take much to keep them going in there with the lock on it.
What did you say about the jail too? Is there something that needs to be done with the jail?
Oh, we should maybe, as long as we're, take a look at that jail. I believe, it's got a, what is it, powder coating on it? I think it's got some kind of, but I think it's starting to get to the point where there's some things in there maybe rusting. And we should maybe take a look at that. And we maybe ought to think about trying to get a roof over the top of it. I'm not saying close the sides in, but maybe something that would help protect it a little bit from the weather.
Do the second graders go in that too?
Oh,
Yeah, they
that's
love
one of their
that.
favorite
Yeah,
ones.
that's right.
This and then the jail.
Right, so that's why we have to keep that, the jail,
Yeah.
make sure that it doesn't go
I
away.
think that sounds like a good Eagle Scout project, a little roof, some kind of gazebo or something over the jail.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that would be.
Yeah, because I run that jail for the kids going in.
And he hasn't he didn't lose a finger yet.
In Home Depot, I bet, or Lowe's would give us material, to, if you went there and said, this is what you're gonna do it for. I bet they would give you the material that you need to create a post, 4 posts and a roof over top of that. They do that, they give materials for things like that.
I like the idea of a scout project. They're always looking for projects. That's a good one.
So to redo the floor, does that have to be done in a historic fashion by a historic renovator, or can that be done by an Eagle Scout?
I would guess it could be, and I don't know if we'd have to replace a whole lot of that or just get in there some way figuring out how to fasten it down. We had, was a couple of years ago, right as you come in the door, the planks are sort of up like this. And you couldn't get in it because it was locked, and one of the kids, sure enough, there was a raccoon that got trapped in underneath the floor.
Oh.
And it was sort of what you would call mummified, and every kid that come through there that was like that was telegraphed. Everybody knew about it, and that was the main attraction. So stuff like that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
High point of the field trip.
That's all they talk about. Oh, the raccoons. But we should get that open.
Yes.
Yeah.
Need to get everything out of there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Not
quite as cool as that.
Oh, no, there's hornet's nest and a lean-to on it, but that can be taken care of.
Yeah, it's just the kids and their parents are kind of concerned when they see that.
Well, we had them in the park this year too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have reached the time
Limit.
that we need to break down for
Good discussion.
the next meeting. It was a great discussion, great dinner, and really appreciate all that you do for the town. It's just.
I like second Wally's or Walt's comments about your support
Oh,
for the
yes.
commission.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
Been great because a lot of these communities, they don't support us or
Yes.
the historic commission like you folks. I really appreciate it.
Good.
And there are people from the town or around the community that do
Yeah.
recognize that, don't think they don't.
Well, good. That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
It keeps you now.
Okay, thank you.
We're over.
evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Monday, April 10th, 2017. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Trustees Rita Dozell. Here. Sandy Hammerlin.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Mark Lasis.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Town Manager, Assistant Town Manager Martin Toth.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry. Here. Town Clerk Phyllis Sargent here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda or other changes that you'd like to see?
Move for approval.
I noticed a typographical error.
Okay.
Consent agenda 11A, which calls for the approval of the minutes for the February 27th meeting. I think it should be the March 13th meeting. The minutes are actually the March 13th, which are reflected there.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Move
All right,
for
we have a
approval as amended.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Pennington.
Second.
Second by Trustee Hansen. All those in favor? Kevin? Okay, passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who would like to start? Kevin?
Start. 3 comments. First, very appreciative to the scores of individuals who have commented about the idea to acquire Lakeshore. I can't and we can't stress enough the importance that we are early in this process. While it's important to move quickly in any real estate transaction, and that doesn't mean that a real estate transaction should be rushed, and so a full due diligence will be completed. Receiving comments and feedback from the community is part of that due diligence. So there will obviously be some aggregating of the comments and the emails that will come in. I personally, and I think it's important for all of us to read every comment and not to solely rely on a summary. So for those in the community, please keep those comments coming. It's a great example of where we can engage the community, not just in a formal setting like this, but in the stores and the gas stations and the coffee shops. So if you see me in any of those, feel free to stop. There's a lot of passion and interest about this. Like a lot of folks, I'm also eager to learn more, including feedback from the community. Second, I wanted to follow up to a comment made by Sergeant Chamberlain in a dialogue last week during the retreat about an increase in calls that has resulted in some reduced patrolling. Well, I absolutely agree that the priority should be responding to calls over traffic. I hope that the Sheriff's Office will consider the growing needs of the community in their proposed annual budget, which is, I believe, submitted for consideration by the board every July. And personally, I have no tolerance for speeders, and I'm increasingly concerned about a major injury accident, given the fact that people seem to have taken some advantage over seeing fewer traffic patrol cars on the streets. And third, this Easter week and the nice spring weather reminds me and many of our neighbors to turn on the sprinklers. An inefficient sprinkler not only wastes water, but wastes your money. Superior, in combination with the Center for Resource Conservation, offers a free assessment of your sprinkler system. Rebates are also available for a smart sprinkler system. So sign up. I did, and I'm eager to get my assessment. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Rita?
Okay, and you didn't do anything else? I mean, I'm sure you did something else. Okay, all right.
I did. No report on it.
Okay, all right. I think we haven't met for a while, so on March 14th, I went to the Community Solutions Transportation Discussion Member Meeting. It was very informative and good overview of the transportation bills that are winding their way and have wound their way now through the legislature here in Colorado. On March 15th, went to a Dr. Cog Finance Committee and Board meeting. On March 17th, there was a Historical Commission meeting, and tonight we had dinner with the Historical Commission prior to this in a work session, so it was a great session to meet with those people and listen to their work that they're doing and also their concerns. Two of their programs that are coming up on April 20th at 7 p.m. right here in Town Hall. There will be a presentation on Superior's archaeological dig. Oh, I can't say that tonight. And then on May 6th at 2 p.m., there will be an actual annual historic walk over to the original mine site. So that'll be fun, too, to walk over there and see where the mine camp used to be and where the opening of the mine was, and learn some other facts about what made Superior so superior, and made our coal superior as well. On April 3rd, went to the board retreat, which all of us did, and then on April 4th was at the medical office building groundbreaking over here. Very well done. Enjoyed it, enjoyed talking with the people that are owning the building and then that are going to be actual companies that are going to be in the building. So it was very nice, a little wet, but it worked out great for putting a shovel into the dirt. And then this weekend, twice, I took my niece, her husband, and their 2 young daughters who were visiting me from Minnesota to the Wildflower Park. They loved it. And we went on Thursday when they first got here. Then they went to Estes Park. And then when they came back Sunday afternoon, the first thing they said to me as they ran through my door, let's go to Wildflower Park. So I can't wait to open it up this Saturday. It was great. They went on every piece of equipment. They really love the actual workout equipment where, that are stuck up on the, I don't know what you call them, but, the actual workout equipment. They were up there for an hour doing every one of those devices that were up there. And then on Saturday, I wasn't able to go to the Easter egg rush because I was hauling 2 pickup loads of tree branches to the landscaping recycle place before it closed for 2 weeks for renovation. And I want to thank Drake, who's our newest town employee, who was so helpful in helping me unload the pickups full of branches. And you got to be young, like him, to get up there on top of those branches and throw them into the roll-off. So I want to thank him for helping me with that, and look forward to when we get the landscape recycling area redone so that you can actually pull through and around. It'll be great. Thank you.
Yep, nothing to report, but I do want to recognize the Parks and Rec staff for the incredible job that you guys do in getting the fields ready. Spring sports are underway, and it's really nice to see the fields ready to go and it packed on the weekends and the evenings with young soccer players and baseball players and all that. So thank you very much for the great job you do.
I sent an email out to the board to announce this, but I don't know that the public knows that BVSD in either the last or the second to the last board meeting voted to disallow tours of any school children to Rocky Flats, which I strongly support. And I understand that Jeffco schools received public comment asking for the same at their last meeting. I don't believe they acted on it yet, but I think these are good signs that we take Rocky Flats seriously. Want to thank Sandy Hammerly for attending the March 22nd CAPS meeting, and you may have a few words to say about that, Sandy. I will point out that one of CAP's first priorities is to settle on a concept to bring back to the board for the roundabout. And I think they're pretty close to coming to the board. Daryl, when you come up here later, you might tell us when you're going to bring that idea before us. Did the same things as Rita Retreat. Went to the Firehouse Subs grand opening with the fire truck there. Held a First Fridays and had record large attendance because of the enthusiasm to discuss the lakeshore idea. So I think we had, after the count for the trustees that were there, about 30 residents in and out of that thing in that hour and a half time period. So that was really great. And then attended a consortium of cities meeting last Wednesday. And a lot of things didn't really apply directly to Superior. But Kendra, one thing they did bring up was this idea of marijuana clubs. And apparently you don't buy marijuana or sell marijuana at marijuana clubs, you just bring it. And so the question is, did our code
that we adopt a banning at band clubs explicitly?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. They encouraged us to ask that question. And then on Monday, for those of you interested, is a Rocky Flat Stewardship Council meeting at 8:30 in the morning if you choose to attend that over at the Jeffco Rocky Mountain Airport. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
On April 3rd, I attended the board retreat here, and we had a great retreat on the 3rd. I was really encouraged. I left that retreat thinking that we actually got some things accomplished, and I thought it was really important for us to articulate what our goals were as a board, and I think I came away from that retreat feeling that we all shared 4 major issues that we seem to have consensus on as to what those goals were, and that those goals were the rec center, building Parks 1 and 2, building out the plaza, commercial core of Superior Town Center, and then transportation issues. I think that provides great direction for staff and for the public at large to just know what the board is prioritizing. So I thought that was just a great retreat. I attended the First Fridays on April 7th, which, as was previously stated, had a great response, where we spoke mainly about Lakeshore. To echo what Trustee Ryan said, we've received a tremendous outpouring of emails, Facebook comments on Nextdoor, individual discussions on the CAC listserv. I'm reading every single one of them. I know all the board members are as well. And it's just great to have such an active and engaged populace here in Superior. So to echo what Trustee Ryan said, before any decision is made, we're going to do our due diligence. But rest assured that we're hearing the public comments. We appreciate the engagement, and I encourage everybody to keep it up. The telephonic broadband survey has been completed, and now town staff has posted the broadband survey online. So if anybody wants to weigh in on that, please do. And then lastly, on Saturday, April 22nd, which is Earth Day, OSAC is sponsoring the Great Superior Cleanup. So please sign up, grab a bag, some gloves, and let's make this town spick and span for spring. Thanks.
Thank you. Sandy?
I attended the ProStac meeting on March 15th. The committee continues to work on indoor space needs. At the time of that meeting, the ProStac was unaware of the potential acquisition of Lakeshore. So it wasn't even in their discussion at that point, but I would like to remind the community and the board to look at the list of priorities that ProStac came up with at their meeting, so that it's fresh in your mind as we're thinking about Lakeshore. What were the things that ProStac believed were priorities for indoor recreation space? At that meeting, the ProStac also released its annual community amenity priorities. Number 1 on the list, I don't think anyone's surprised, was the indoor recreation space. Number 2 was a skate park, including improvements at the South Pool Skate Park and upgrading the West multipurpose fields at Community Park. While the top item on the list hasn't changed from last year, items 2 and 3 did change. The skate park was way down at number 20 last year, and I think part of the reason that it moved to the top is we've got a change in the composition of the committee, but it's also recognizing the fact that the committee is concerned about teen amenities in the community, and the skate park is certainly an important one. So the fact that it moved from number 20 to 2 is pretty important. The Community Park West multi-purpose fields and the upgrading of them continues to be a priority, and I hope that at some point we can see that. The third one last year for ProStac was the Coyote Ridge Bike Park enhancements, and they actually did that work, a lot of that work last spring, and a number of the community members came out and helped us with that. So that one now has moved off the top of the list. I will also remind everyone on behalf of ProStac that this weekend we'll be dedicating Wildflower Park, and it will also be the annual Arbor Day celebration. There's lots of fun activities that the various committees have put together for that, and I really encourage folks to come out and take part. I attended the CAPS meeting on March 26th for Mayor Pro Tem Pennington. My apologies to members of the committee for arriving late. Unfortunately, I had a work commitment that I could not leave. That committee is continuing to amaze me with the enthusiasm and the just great ideas that they're coming up with to build community. And I am just really appreciative of the enthusiasm and the ideas that are coming through them. During that meeting, though, I was again reminded that most of our advisory committees do not have any sort of budget to work with. And so when they come up with ideas, they're somewhat stymied because they have to wait to see if there's some budget available to them. I believe that OSAC does have maybe, I don't even remember the figure, but I know they do have some money available to do National Trails Day and other things. But I don't think CAPS has any budget whatsoever. I know ProStack does not. And so I would like to see whether in the 2017-18 budget process we might be able to consider at least some small amount that all of our committees would have to work with for doing programmatic activities. This is not talking capital improvements. It's just give them some money to work with so they can do things. The other thing that kind of came to mind is that I wonder whether there might be some value in having a committee day where all of the committees can come together, share ideas, and just get to know each other. As a general rule, our advisory committees don't get to know each other. There are some overlap on some topics. Maybe it's a committee retreat. I don't know, but it just seems like as we get more and more people engaged in our advisory committees, that there might be a way to build some working relationships between the committees so that the board doesn't necessarily, and the staff don't necessarily become the interface and really encourage the committees to work together more. I attended First Fridays at Starbucks on April 7th. I want to assure those that attended, as well as the hundreds of citizens who have engaged online, that there was a comment during the meeting that it sounded like most of the board members were leaning toward acquisition. And I think Kevin, Trustee Ryan said, you know, we're all open-minded on this, and I really want to reinforce that I have not made a decision on the topic of purchasing Lakeshore. I strongly encourage citizens who have never been there to go over and take a look. I had never been in the facility until I took a tour several weeks ago with Patrick Hammer. I will continue to listen to the community, but I am also going to be asking a lot of hard questions about how we will operate this on a daily basis from a financial standpoint. And I am very concerned about structural issues up there, and I would really like to see, before we consider any acquisition, that we get an independent structural engineer, possibly someone who has never worked with the community before, to really look at this facility in a real hard way. Having been involved with a pretty large structural lawsuit here in the community, I really appreciate the value that really sound structural engineers can do for you. So I hope we'll do that. I also want to thank all those who participated in the broadband survey. After reading it online, I'm somewhat concerned by the survey, as it asks questions which are difficult to answer for those who have a bundled plan with Comcast. You know, I went back and looked at my bill, for example. I have no idea what I pay for TV. I have no idea what I pay for broadband, because it's all in a single price. And the questionnaire was not designed to deal with that. And so, you know, a friend of mine who took it actually said she probed pretty hard and could not get, there really wasn't a question that dealt with the bundle and the fact that we don't know. But, you know, I literally have no idea what I'm paying for TV. So I'm really interested in hearing from our professional company uptown about that, because I don't think we've got good solid data, because we are unable to break it out because Comcast doesn't give us a breakout. And I don't think you can call them and they'll give it to you either. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of data. But thank you again to everybody who participated in that survey. And that would be it.
Okay, thank you. On March 14th, I attended the 36 Commuting Solutions meeting, and I gave the update on behalf of the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition at that meeting. And then on the 16th, I went to the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting that was held here at Superior Town Hall. Our group had a conference call with our federal lobbyists, and they gave us an update on the President's preliminary budget and some significant pieces of that could potentially affect our corridor along US 36. The preliminary budget calls for a 13% cut to the Department of Transportation, elimination of the Tiger Grant program in 2018, which we have used in the past to fund projects in the area, most notably the US 36 reconstruction. And more details are certainly to be forthcoming on this. We also spent a good bit of time on state transportation funding. House Bill 1242, the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition supports that, supports the principles of the bill, recognizing that it could change as it moves through. It's now passed the House and it's now in the Senate. On the 3rd, I attended the Board of Trustees retreat, and like everyone, felt like we had good results of that meeting. It was great to hear the consensus of board member goals at that. And that's also where we introduced the topic of Lakeshore to ProStack, and really appreciate ProStack really rallying to the occasion and coming out to be at that meeting and having a very good discussion at that meeting. And it seems like it's a couple of weeks ago, but it's actually only been a week ago. So appreciate all of the feedback that we've received, and echo those comments of fellow board members to please keep those comments coming. Next day, went to the groundbreaking at Superior Medical Office, and like Rita, I thought that was a very well put together event, and look forward to having that facility in town. Next day, I went to the Metro Mayors Caucus full meeting in Denver. This is a group of 40 mayors from around the Metro Denver area that meet to discuss regional issues, and a good bit of discussion at that meeting also on the transportation bill that's in the State House and now in the Senate. And let's see, on the 6th of April, went to another Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting. That's a monthly meeting. And another call with the Washington, D.C. lobbyists, just staying up to date on funding opportunities that, as things continue to develop with the new administration. On last Friday, went to Mayor Pro Tem Pennington's First Fridays, and had not been to one of those for a while, and really enjoyed the opportunity to be there and see the great turnout at that event. And then went to the ribbon cutting at Firehouse Subs, and appreciate the Historic Commission bringing out the historic fire truck for that event. And tonight, appreciate the Historical Commission being here for the dinner with the board. Tomorrow is the State of Superior Manager Mayor update at the Sports Stable, 12 to 1 o'clock. The Superior Chamber is maintaining the sign-up list for that, so please sign up just so we make sure we've got an accurate count on who's coming. It's free to attend. And all of the other events that I had on my list have been mentioned by others, so I will stop there. We have Assistant Town Manager Martin Toth here tonight. Any announcements, Martin?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Kendra?
Nothing for me, thank you.
And Phyllis?
Nothing for me.
Okay, great. And now we're ready for public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make any comments on consent agenda or non-agenda items? Ken?
Good evening. Ken Lish, OSAC Chair. I just wanted to come up and give you guys a update on the dog waste problem that OSAC has taken on to try to help solve for our community. To give you an idea of the approach that we're taking, it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. The first prong is addressing the underlying problem, which we've identified as more or less helping encourage people to being a responsible pet guardian. We're addressing this by creating outreach that's focused on education and responsibility. We'll be presenting at both Arbor Day and the National Trails Day event education material that addresses how leaving dog waste behind leads to bacteria, viruses, and disease entering our environment. So the whole idea is try to help people become more cognizant of the ramifications of leaving the waste behind. Additionally, we have ordered 500 of these portable dog waste containers. They are branded with the Town of Superior logo. We'll be distributing these at both Arbor Day and National Trails Day. Even though we have a great system of bag pickup locations across, this should hopefully help make sure people always have something with them. And beyond that, we're hoping that this will take one big step to stopping the problem. The other prong of our approach is addressing the symptom of the problem, which is the dog waste is left behind. As Trustee Lasis mentioned, we have organized a special cleanup event that we're co-hosting with RCAC. That event has been branded the Great Superior Cleanup. That's going to be the weekend of April 22nd, and that corresponds with Earth Day. The idea is that residents pledge to spend time picking up pet waste, litter, and anything else that needs to be cleaned up. They are free to choose a time that works for them and a location that they're passionate about cleaning. The idea was that this would help increase the number of participants. To additionally help encourage the number of participants, OSAC has committed to delivering supplies directly to participants' doors. That way they have everything available to them to do this. Or if they prefer, residents can provide their own, or they can come pick up supplies at Town Hall that week, leading up to that weekend. Beyond that, we've done some marketing through the CAC with town staff, but it's been minimal thus far, and we already have 16 residents that have signed up, plus an entire scout troop. So we already have very good participation, and we'll be ramping up the marketing even more, so we anticipate even more. So we're very excited, and we'll keep you posted on how successful that event is ultimately. We'll be following up with questions to everybody who does participate about where they picked up, how much they picked up. We're going to encourage people to take pictures, so we're going to try to measure the actual success and be able to come back to you guys. We'll see if anybody responds, but we'll do our best. Beyond that, I just wanted to briefly touch on one of the topics at the board retreat. I sincerely apologize I was unable to attend, but I did watch the video yesterday, and I just wanted to briefly address the misconception that OSAC was ever trying to strip any duties from ProStack. That was certainly not our intention, and if it came across that way, I apologize for the way we worded our recommendation. The sole intent that OSAC ever had was that now might be the right time to take a step back and look how the committees have matured over the years and figure out what makes sense now as far as delineating responsibilities and roles. So our recommendation was simply, let's reevaluate, make sure there's strong delineation of roles and responsibilities, and move from there. That way we don't have the overlap. And then finally, I just wanted to touch base on what Trustee Hammerly was mentioning earlier. OSAC agrees wholeheartedly that there are definitely additional opportunities for the committees to work together, and we've started to take steps to do so. OSAC and ProStack already work on a number of different efforts together on a fairly regular basis. We try to organize cleanup events. We coordinate our 5-year Trails plan and other events as well. But in addition to that, we're co-hosting the Superior Cleanup with RCAC. And then we've also invited the CAPS group to come and host a booth at the National Trails Day. So we are definitely taking steps in that direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So how do you sign up if you want to, you said you'll deliver stuff to people's houses. How does one sign up?
So far the only marketing that we've done is through the listserv, and there's been a link there that will bring anybody to a form that asks for kind of your name, your address, that sort of thing. Okay. And additionally, we'll be ramping up on all the other social networks within the week or so leading up to the event. That way we don't over-market it.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
I'm Daryl McCool, and I'm the chair of CAPS. And
I'm Melinda Tan, I'm the co-chair.
And we just want to take a couple minutes of your time to talk to you about something that's on our work plan, which is the parties in the park. We want to do a formal presentation at the April 24th meeting, but because there's some opportunities that came up for marketing, we want to just make sure that everybody's on board. The parties in the park event is scheduled for June 10th, and we can get into the Superior Chamber rooftop drop if we have marketing materials to them by April 14th. And we also want to be able to advertise at Arbor Day for the parties in the park. So this is just a little piece. You guys can see what we were hoping to hand out. And if you have any questions about the parties, we're happy to answer them now, but we want to do a more formal presentation about them and what our thoughts are.
Can you give just a brief description of what you hope to accomplish with the parties in the park?
I guess the main objective is kind of a neighborhood meetup, greet up, to just foster some community outreach. And we want to do it this particular date because we wanted to give opportunity for neighbors to meet each other, maybe talk about the 4th of July, and we'll kind of plant the seed of some floats, being some float ideas that people might want to take charge of. We also thought it would be a good opportunity to introduce or have people meet at the local parks, and so we've kind of divided it up by these
7 parks.
By seven parks, so that's not right. And so we've divided it up so people don't have to cross major roads, and we can all greet, and we'll have games, and we're just kind of planning it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we haven't formally planned all of it, but we really wanted to take advantage of these marketing opportunities. So we wanted to be sure that you guys were okay with us going ahead with doing that, since it has to happen before the meeting on the 24th.
it's kind of the cultural component of the CAPS name, and community, and just it's also a great opportunity to introduce ourselves, because we're hoping to have a pretty big or a bigger presence in the community, just to get people together and talk about our objectives and get people excited about some the opportunities.
So the idea is to have multiple events going on at these different parks the same day and time.
Yeah, very low key. We talked about, what were some of the games?
Is the idea still the pocket parks, or are we talking the major parks too?
We were talking mostly the major parks because we know they all have shelters and tables, and so that's one less thing that we would have to worry about, and a central location that people could come to. I think originally when the idea was floated, it was cul-de-sacs that we thought it would be really cool just to do, but there's 200 cul-de-sacs, and some areas of town don't have cul-de-sacs. So we were trying to figure out how to make it a neighborhood event, but also manageable.
And are members of your committee going to be kind of divide and conquer and be at each one to kind of help facilitate? Because
and that's what we're hoping to do in the presentation. The idea is that each one of us would host a party, essentially.
Okay, great.
And we hope that each one of you can attend at least one of them, if you didn't want to bounce around to all of them.
Right.
Well, great ideas.
So are you guys okay if we go ahead and get some marketing materials printed up for Arbor Day and also for the rooftop drop? Because that hits 1,000 homes, which is essentially free advertising, which is good.
Yes.
This is a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, additional public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll go on to presentations. First on our presentations, we are pleased to have Wyatt Lyles, who is an Eagle Scout candidate working on his final service project. So welcome to Wyatt. Patrick, you're going to have a little introduction?
Let's get everything kind of ready. Patrick Hammer, town staff, so I get the opportunity to present to you guys quite a bit, normally about a park or an FDP or a trail or dog waste or something. But it is exciting when we do get to kind of show you the other side of what goes on, which is working with great volunteers. As you know, we get a ton of requests for Eagle Scout projects. In my years here, this is the only second time that we've actually had an Eagle Scout who's wanted to present to the town board. So I can say that having met and worked with Wyatt briefly, he has been one of the more impressive Eagle Scouts in that he came with an idea, he came with a plan, and has been willing to work with myself and staff from start to finish. So with that, it's
Patrick, who was the other Eagle Scout that presented to the board?
it happened to be somebody's older brother.
We see a pattern here. That's good.
And we love it. So with that, I would like to have Wyatt review with you a partnership idea that he had to work with us in Parks and Rec on a project over at Williams Field.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wyatt Lyles. I am a Life Scout in Troop 278, and basically I'm presenting a project that I've worked with Patrick Hammer a little bit with. Alright, so why would I come down here and present this project? So basically, down at Williams Field, there's gravel in place at the entrance, and this gravel is insufficient for Colorado weather because all the water we get from rain and snow washes the gravel out onto the baseball field and the turf field. Alright, so basically these next two slides are the dimensions of the area, and so as you can see on the top left corner, that's the entrance to the east side baseball field, and to the right, those are the steps to the football field. Alright, so here's the continuation of those dimensions. And then, so basically, what this project is going to be is putting in cement and pavers. Down here on the picture, there's the red side is going to be cement, and this will be reinforced with rebar, which will be allowing vehicles to drive over it during town events such as the 4th of July and the Chili Fest. And then on the blue side, that will be pavers, and this will be more aesthetically pleasing and better for pedestrian use. So what are some benefits of this? Why would you carry out with this project? So basically, the cement will be very good for when vehicles drive across, and the pavers are aesthetically pleasing and great for pedestrian use. Not only that, but the gravel will not get onto the field, and then you do not have to replace the field, which costs a lot of money. Alright, so as I said before, the red side is where the cement is, and basically this will be reinforced with rebar and will be nice and strong for vehicles to come across and stuff. Alright, and then on the right side will be pavers, and these are basically bricks that you can put in to the ground, and they're fairly strong and good for pedestrian use only. And then on the left-hand side, right here, where there's this border, there is grass and dirt, and so we will have a rolled steel edge border, which will divide the grass and the concrete. So there's, I've said before, there's a lot of dog waste, and dogs need to be on leash, and the dogs are not allowed on the field. And so currently we do have a sign there, but I feel like we could get another sign somewhere else, or even a bigger sign, because clearly this is still a problem in this area. And so the sign will cost about $200 to $400, which I will fundraise for. So how will I fundraise for this sign? Basically, we will get donor bricks, which is a way to get your name on that brick, and you will help fundraise for that project, and then we'll use those bricks on the paver side, and so you'll have your name down at Williams Field if you choose to purchase one. So what is my role in being an Eagle Scout or Eagle Scout candidate? So basically, I'm trying to make a difference in my community, and I've chosen to help down at Williams Field. Also, I'm to make a plan about what is going to happen, and currently I'm trying to carry out with that plan as much as I can. Third, I am to fundraise, and so the ordinance sign I will fundraise, and that will be how I fundraise. So the fourth part is to get a crew, and I'm going to use my local or my scout troop, and I will get volunteers from there, and we will carry out the project with that. And then finally, I'm to lead, and so I'm not really supposed to do all the hard working. I'm supposed to get a good leadership experience and really help the community in as much as possible. All right, so before I go, are there any questions about this project? Go ahead.
I want to compliment you for the initiative to expand on the no pets, because that sign that's there now, nobody reads. And during a national night out with the fire trucks and everything down at Community Park, the turf field, I don't know, had 40 people with pets on it. And the sign's right there. So I would challenge you in your creativity and maybe some Google research to figure out how other communities get through to us thick-headed adults that we cannot take our pet out on that turf field. So I'd like to see a real creative solution thought up.
Yeah, I'll think it through.
It may be just a huge sign.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, but thank you for thinking of that.
All right, any more questions?
Great job, Wyatt. Where will the bricks, where do you get the bricks that have the donor name on them? Are they special ordered, or do you make them? Where do they come
So
from?
there's a company down in Denver called donorbricks.com, and basically you order them online. They take a couple of weeks to get them in, and then we get them and we can put them in.
Thank you.
All right, well.
You can sign me up for a donor brick, by the way.
Yeah, sign me up too.
I think you need to send a notice to all of us.
How much are you going to charge for the bricks?
Depending on the bricks price, I don't think it shouldn't be too expensive, but I'm not quite sure how much it could cost.
And do we have any say as to what actually goes on the bricks?
Yeah.
Just your name, or what?
Yeah, it'll probably be your name and.
I want to put my son's names.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, probably.
Well, that's
your
two
name,
bricks,
your
Mark.
family
Yeah.
name.
There you go.
That's fine.
There you go. You're almost halfway there. 2 bricks. See how easy that was?
Yep.
All right. No, great project, and we appreciate you approaching the town and working with Patrick and staff.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Would you like a picture with the board? I'm always big on pictures, and I know parents are too. So why don't you come on up to the dais.
Down front. Or he could come back here.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Then you have to look over it, whatever they.
Yeah, just stand
Everybody say Superior.
Superior.
Everybody say 3 bricks, please. 3 bricks, please.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next on our agenda is the presentation from Superior Chamber of Commerce. So welcome, Heather Craycraft.
Get out of your way.
You're good. Good evening, Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. And I get the pleasure of presenting after a very impressive young man. So thank you. That's incredible community support from that full family. So very exciting to see the improvements that will be made down at Williams Field. Honestly, many of the things that I was going to talk about you mentioned, but I did want to also, on behalf of the whole community, thank the Historic Commission and the town staff for making it possible to get the historic fire truck down to one of our newest business owners, Thad, who owns Firehouse Subs, thoroughly appreciated the opportunity to get to sit in the fire truck, not alone have the pictures taken around it. So I think it was really quite a fitting moment. I think the Historic Commission gets the credit for coming up with the idea, and the staff made it happen. So thank you very much for making that celebration even bigger and better than we could have imagined. And one of our local business owners, I believe it was Mayor Pro Tem Pennington's idea to put a picture of this event on the wall inside the restaurant. And we have another business owner, Shanty, who owns Rock Creek After School, wants to pay for that to happen. So she's going to go ahead and take one of the pictures and put it on a canvas with the owner's okay, of course, and we will have that up in the restaurant. So I wanted to say thank you for everyone's efforts on Friday, a fantastic celebration. And also just wanted to point out that, yes, Saturday is Arbor Day. For anyone who has not paid attention to what's going on, it's Wildflower Park will be officially celebrated on Saturday from 9 o'clock in the morning till noon. Town staff has put together a fantastic lineup of activities along with the Superior Youth Committee. They're doing some things, and I believe every commission is pretty much going to be there doing something, so it should be a fun day. And we are planning for a larger group than we usually have to plant trees and to dedicate that day to Arbor Day and the wonderful community we are a part of. So lastly, tomorrow is the State of Superior's address from the town manager and mayor, so thank you, Mayor, for mentioning that. It is at 12 o'clock noon in the sports stable upstairs in the community room. We will be at the door to hopefully guide anyone who has not been in the building upstairs to the appropriate room, but they'll get to see most of the building at the same time. So thank you for that. And if you have any questions, please look up the Superior Chamber, and we will see you tomorrow at noon. Thank you.
Heather, I'd like to mention two things. One is I got an email, and I think it was to a lot of people, about Superior Liquor having specials at its store with any product that had anything to do with Firehouse or Hose and Ladder or whatever, burnt toast or something like that, to mark the opening of Firehouse Subs. Mm-hmm. So there was this collaborative spirit there, and yes, and wishing them well, and I thought that was a real heads-up thing by another business. The second thing was I did not know the history of Firehouse Subs. I just thought they were another deli, and in fact they are firemen who started this enterprise, you know, the corporation, et cetera. And I assume was Thad?
He was a Coast Guard.
Okay, but okay. Anyway, so knowing that,
yes,
I'll go there instead of some of my other delis.
Yes, I've tried to talk them into to Thad coming up with his own recipe for a chili, so we can see a little competition come Chili Fest. So okay, more to come.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Heather.
But you're the only one that got that stuff from Superior Liquor. It must be because of your customer status, huh? I didn't get it.
I didn't get it. I augmented it that day because everything was like such a deal.
Yeah, I didn't get anything.
Okay. Okay. Well, we need to work on that.
Well,
clearly.
I will thank Pete for the personal
Come on, Pete,
special.
we'll have to have a happy hour after the meeting, maybe. Huh?
Okay. On that note, the next item is the consent agenda. We have items A through F, and do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Lasis and second by Trustee Dozell. All those in favor?
We are spending.
We are
Yeah.
spending.
Are we
so
spending?
roll call.
Oh, yeah, the
yes.
pond maintenance agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I jumped the gun on that. Roll call vote.
Okay. Dozell?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes unanimous. All right, item number 12 is adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code by amending Section 16-1-70 and by the addition of a new article concerning group homes.
Thank you, Mayor. As noted in the cover memo, the town currently doesn't have a process for how to consider allowing a group home where unrelated individuals live and receive professional support on a residential basis. So making this change will help the town remain in compliance with the Federal Fair Housing Act, which includes specific requirements for accommodations for individuals with disabilities or including physical and mental impairments. So staff has had a chance to review the issue with Town Attorney Carberry to develop this recommended amendment to the code to modify the definition of this particular use. And then this amendment also identifies a process to consider this type of use through a specific method, a special use permit review application. This made the most sense to staff to address this item if an application were to be submitted for this type of use. Then we would be able to look at each application on a case-by-case basis depending on the details and the circumstances of that individual application. So that was the kind of the overview. Town Attorney Carberry and I are here to answer questions if we can.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
So did we not have the ability to have homes like this in town before?
There was oddly, there was a definition of group home in the code, but there was no actual procedure for applying for a group home before. So it was probably an oversight when we redid Chapter 16 a few years ago. We did a massive rewrite of Chapter 16.
Yeah.
And somehow we got the definition, but we didn't actually have a process for putting one in.
Okay, so is there, and I'm sorry, I didn't see it in here, it could be there, but is there a limit on the number of people that could live in a group home?
No, that will be determined at the time of the special use permit application. So at that time, the board could condition the number of people living there. There's a lot of different conditions that could be imposed depending on the size of the home, the number of residents, the potential impact to the neighborhood, the number of vehicles,
right,
the number of drivers. All of those things would be
that was
considerations.
where I was going with that, because we just had lengthy discussion about the number of cars, home-based businesses in parts of the community.
Right.
So as long as that's going to be addressed, fine. But what I just heard you say is that the board at the time of the application will make the decision on how many people can be in there. And to me, that maybe sets the board up to be in a really awkward position, because if we say one home can have 5 people in there, but then another one we say we can only have 3, to me that creates an issue.
Unfortunately, under the Fair Housing Act, because we're required to make, quote, reasonable accommodations, it really depends on the application, the number of people they're proposing, the actual house that they're proposing to locate in. For example, if it's an 8-bedroom house, it would be unreasonable for us to say only 3 occupants.
Okay.
So if it's a 3-bedroom house, maybe it would be more reasonable, but it's impossible to tell until we received an application. And the Fair Housing Act is just very, we're not specific. We can't make specific requirements saying 1 per bedroom or 2 per bedroom. We actually have to look at it on a case-by-case basis to determine what accommodations need to be made.
So are there any guidelines from other communities that have done the same thing that we could at least follow? Because again, I would feel uncomfortable making up our own rules, essentially.
Sure, I understand, and most communities have similar ordinances such as this, that they will look at it on a case-by-case basis when the application comes in, and I wish I had a better answer to say it's 2 people per bedroom or 1 person per bedroom, but it's just impossible to do that until the idea of a reasonable accommodation is that the accommodation needs to be reasonable based on all of the circumstances that are presented to you at the time. So it depends on the neighborhood, it depends where it's located. Again, it depends how many children, if it's children are of driving age, and how many cars, those kind of things.
So we could actually restrict the number of cars, but still allow a group home to go in.
Yeah, we as long as the conditions are reasonable, then yes, we can impose conditions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I understand there has been an inquiry. Do you have any idea around the circumstances of that inquiry? How many residents or anything else?
No, the inquiry was very general. The inquiry said they were looking, and I'd be completely honest, it may have been a fishing expedition. It's our understanding that we were not the only community to get this inquiry in this area. Sometimes they're looking for litigation. I hate to say that, but sometimes that's what the inquiry is about. But what they said is they were looking for a 6 to 8 bedroom home. They did not name a particular area of town that they were looking in, but they wanted to know the process should they find such a home for applying for, to have a group home there. So it simply could have been someone looking to see what our response would be.
Okay. Thank you.
I presume, since we're talking about homes here, that most of these group homes are sited in a residential area. But is there any zoning restrictions for the location? I mean, if we're doing things by use by special review, could group homes be placed in areas that are zoned other than residential, number one? And then number 2, a large portion of our town is governed by an HOA, and does the HOA have any restrictions on siting a group home within it?
Well, I don't like to give legal advice to the HOA, but the HOA is still subject to the Fair Housing Act, so I don't know what the rules and regulations are as far as group homes. I'm referring to the one HOA that I know about. There's obviously more than one, but the biggest one in town being Rock Creek. I'm not sure what their rules are. This, basically what the Fair Housing Act requires is that they be allowed in residential districts specifically because that's where people live. So the idea is that if people want to live in a group home, they should have the same opportunity to live in a residential district as everyone else. It does not require that we allow them in commercial districts or any other districts. It requires that we allow them in residential districts. So to the extent someone comes in and applies in an industrial commercial district, we do not have to make that accommodation. It's only in the residential districts.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So we're talking about group homes with individuals having a physical or mental impairment limiting one or more major life activities.
Yes.
So it's not a group home of just a group of young adults that want to live together, because we have different rules about unrelated numbers of unrelated
That's correct.
people.
Like
So
college
can,
students.
yeah, right, exactly. So our college students getting together and 8 of them taking over a house, that would not be the definition of group home as defined here, correct?
That's-
Could you refresh that?
Sure, that's-
Unrelated members?
Sure. There's no more than 3 unrelated individuals are allowed to live in one home in Superior. It stems usually from college towns where they don't want, 6, students living together who are not related. What this does is this supersedes that by saying you can have unrelated people living together, but what it does require is that if you look at Section 1 of the ordinance, it talks about where physical assistance or supervision is provided by resident or non-resident professional support personnel for compensation as a continual benefit. So this is not intended to apply to students. This is for people who need assistance of some sort. So that's the
So
difference.
that still is in place?
That's in
That's a
place.
separate one, so no more than 3 unrelated in any house, and it doesn't matter the size of the house?
That's correct. It
Okay.
does not matter the size, and that is, again, for people who are not receiving assistance. If
Right.
they are receiving assistance and they need a, quote, reasonable accommodation because of a physical, mental impairment, limiting one or more major life activities, then it comes into this group home. And then the 3 unrelated does not apply anymore.
Okay, and then, so in the ordinance, we have section 1636-10, which talks about the special use permit required. Is that these are all new? This is all new language?
Yes, this is a
Okay.
whole new, we've just.
Whole new section.
For ease I don't know how to say it, and I don't want to say enforcement, but ease of operation, we've just added an entirely new article, and it just says, this just applies to group homes.
Okay, and then my last question is that, so before we consider the special use permit, they already would have had to have received a state license, correct? For a group home to be operated? What about the state licensing as separate from our special use within the
Yes,
town?
exactly. It says licensed by the state. Now,
Right.
the timing we might have to, if they've applied for a state license, we might have to consider the application up to a certain point. So I don't want to say we can say, hold on, you don't have a state. Sometimes those things, we can do it concurrently.
Okay, that's a fair description. I just want to make sure that I understood that they can have a group home ultimately without 2 things, a state license and a special use permit.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's correct.
And the state license may limit the number of people that can be under the household based on the accommodation size and the number of people, adults that are supervising.
Exactly, and it may be
Right.
dependent on the impairments too, and the treatment that they're receiving. So
Right.
you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Yep. And then I just wanted to make sure I understood. It says excluding detention facilities housing juvenile or adult offenders. Does a halfway house, is that the same as a detention facility, or could you have some people who were in prison for whatever reason, they're released from prison, but they go to a halfway house to serve out the rest of their time?
Well, that kind of depends. So detention facility means they are detained there. So typically that would not include halfway houses. If they're wearing ankle bracelets, that might be a little different, but no, it should be people, detention facilities they're detained, they can't leave.
Like a prison?
Or
a
exactly.
jail. Yeah,
Right. So it would not include a jail or a detention facility, meaning that detention facility means that they physically can't leave the premises without some sort of action by someone else.
So would we have the power to restrict a halfway house that?
Yeah. under those circumstances, yes. If a halfway house is open, come and go, and they have a state license and they're receiving treatment, then a halfway house would be considered a group home.
Okay.
But if it's a halfway house where there's no treatment and they're just in there coming and going and there's no, you see, they have to be receiving some supervision, assistance, or treatment. So,
But not treatment for substance abuse.
for current substance abuse. If they're prior, I know this gets very complicated. If they're prior substance abusers who are clean, for a better lack of a better word, then yes, this would include that.
Okay. And nothing we can do about that.
Exactly.
Even if we were home rule.
Exactly. Yes. Even yeah. No, that's a good question. This would make no difference. The Fair Housing Act applies to home rules equally as it does to statutory municipalities and to HOAs.
Okay. Thanks.
That was my question, was if there was any difference in our analysis being a home rule jurisdiction versus a statutory municipality.
No. So this inquiry went, as I understand it, to several other home rule municipalities in the area, and they have to deal with it exactly the same way we do.
What are the consequences if the town refused to enact an ordinance like this?
Right now, there would be no consequence because we do not have anybody walking in the door trying to apply. But if someone came in and tried to apply for this and we had no procedure and we just simply turned them away and said, no group home, we would be in violation of the Fair Housing Act and they could file a lawsuit under the Fair Housing Act. Again, we have not received any application. We received a very general inquiry, not even naming an area of town, just saying we're looking for a 6 to 8 bedroom home in town. What's your process? So.
And are those lawsuits common?
Yes.
Are they brought by the groups that are trying to set up these houses in jurisdictions, or are they brought by citizen advocacy groups?
They're brought by advocacy groups traditionally. And I can't say whether this, we have no indication that this was brought by an advocacy group or not. But there are advocacy groups out there. The same advocacy groups that come to public buildings, and if there's not exactly the correct access for people with disabilities, they will file a lawsuit based on that. It's the same type of advocacy groups, and they so they send inquiries and they look for towns that are not able to accommodate group homes, and then they sue over it. So we have not had any application, and we certainly did not say no. Our answer was there's a process. Let us look at it, and then we'll get back to you. And I don't think we ever heard.
We haven't heard any additional questions other than just the general inquiry that Kendra mentioned.
And in a lawsuit like that, private right of action under the Fair Housing Act, would the plaintiffs recover their attorney's fees from the municipality if they prevailed?
I don't know the answer to that. There's a chance that they would, but I can't give you an answer as to whether they would have attorney fees or not. It depends what kind of claim, but typically they would be successful. I mean, it would be a successful Fair Housing Act complaint if we don't have a process for accommodating these.
Thank you.
I have one last question, I guess, that just came to me. So if we had someone that would come in and create a group home without going through the special use permit, what could we do would we just go to them and say you need to go through the process, or would we tell them to shut it down, or what would be our steps?
You're saying if there was a group home right now?
Yeah. Somebody came in and established a group home without going through this process for a special use permit.
Well, it wouldn't have been lawful at the time because we don't allow them anywhere. So typical zoning codes, the only things that are allowed under a zoning code are what we say is allowed. So if we don't list a use, it's not allowed. So right now, if somebody had come in 2 months ago and established a group home, that would be in violation of our zoning ordinance because we don't allow them. Now, that being said, us not allowing them is also a violation of the Fair Housing Act. If we determine now that there was a group home that didn't follow any process, we would probably go to them and say, hey, we realize you're here, you're allowed to be here, but we would like you to follow some sort of a process so we can impose reasonable conditions and some sort of a collaborative process at this point if there was one already in place. I wouldn't suggest that we go in and say, no more group home.
Right, they could come back anyway and go through the process.
That's what I would suggest, that there be a cooperative, collaborative process by which they came forward and said, here's what we're doing, and here are the accommodations that we're making, and we would say, great, here are the conditions we would like to put on this home.
What do we do about the other, not people who need assistance, but the unrelated individuals? If residents say that there's more than 3 unrelated individuals living in a house, what do we do about that? What's
Call-
our legal steps to deal with that?
The first thing is to call code enforcement, or, code enforcement, we typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, would go out and contact the individuals living there, say, hi, are you related? What are you doing? And that usually resolves the problem, at least in my experience, because once code enforcement goes out there, these are usually students who have no idea that this ordinance exists. And they say, oh, okay, we'll figure it out. And they usually move out or do something, or one of them moves out and two of them stay.
So code enforcement in this case would be Martin. We'd all call Martin.
Well, it's a combination. It's both staff, like the attorney mentioned, then also we work with the sheriff's office to go and just knock and talk and just observe what's going on at a particular residence. And sometimes it is just making the folks who are there aware of the issue. And that usually resolves it.
Okay, thank you.
So, totally supportive of this, and thank you guys did a nice job working with this, but a question and kind of might be a far out what if. Somebody set up the potential for a group home and then went through the licensure process, but it's a short-term stay group home, it's a VRBO type situation, and they say, under the Fair Housing Act, I have 8 bedrooms, I want a special use permit to sublet these 8 bedrooms to folks with the appropriate special needs. There are no applicants for those special needs on a short-term rental, so they want to now rent that on now we've given them that special use permit. Could an able-bodied person, otherwise a able-bodied person, stay in that short-term rental that we accidentally gave a special use permit for?
Well, the terms of the special use permit would need to be complied with, so it would have to be a group home still. And if it doesn't qualify as a group home, then they couldn't use it. So again, that has to be licensed by the state. It has to include individuals who have a record of having a physical or mental impairment. I mean, it would be tough for them to continue to show that they're a group home if they're just using it as a VRBO. So the answer is no, I don't think they could do that.
Good.
There are very creative people who could, but generally the answer is no.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
Yep. I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number O-2, Series 2017, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code by amending Section 16-1-70 and by the addition of a new Article 36 concerning group homes.
Motion by Trustee Hansen, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Anything further before we adjourn? At a record early
That's record time.
That's because we had such a good retreat.
Congratulations. Good job.
Okay, we're adjourned.